Spring practice is on its way in Knoxville. Talking Vols, we've got Charlie Burris on the line, A to Z Sports, and the Big Orange Podcast. Hey, Charlie, what's going on?
Not much, Mark. Happy to be back.
Absolutely. Good to see you. And the Tennessee offense, that's Josh Heupel's baby. It was revved up and rolling most of last season, arguably the most prolific offense in college football, but Hendon Hooker gone. I had my doubts about Joe Milton, but he looked good in the bowl game, and I guess it starts with him unless there's some kind of quarterback competition.
Not that I've heard about, at least so far. Obviously, the sort of new kid on the block, Nico Iamaleava, is super highly touted 5-star on 3. He was the number one player in the class of 2023, period. Not just the number one quarterback, number one player overall on 3. So yeah, a lot of hype for him coming in. I personally, I've heard two things about Nico. One, that if you watch him in person, it's pretty clear that he's going to be a great quarterback unless something just goes awry. Second, that Joe Milton is kind of taking him under his wing. Actually, Josh Heupel did an interview last week. We talked about it on our podcast. Josh Heupel did an interview last week where he talked about that exact relationship, that Joe Milton is kind of guiding Nico so far, and that relationship has been really good. And so beyond that, I haven't heard anything about a real quarterback competition. Obviously, the coaches go out there and they say that publicly. They go, it's going to be a quarterback competition. We're going to play the best guy, or whatever they might say when they go out there. But I think realistically, you have a guy who just won the Orange Bowl, who has an absolute cannon for an arm, who could be starting at who knows how many schools in Division I football right now, but he's at Tennessee. And I'm just not sure that you're really ever going to put a freshman over him unless it's just the greatest freshman to ever play college football or something like that, which it does happen. You know, your Trevor Lawrences and stuff like that. It does happen from time to time. But as of right now, no, that is not something that I've heard might occur.
When I think Hendon Hooker at Tennessee, and I'm a statistical kind of guy, I think TD to pick ratio, that's ungodly, great, phenomenal. I don't know if it is the best in college football, but I would put some money on it being the best in college football for the past 2 years. I know it was 27-2 last year. It was something similar to that the year before, 38-3 or something like that. Then I think Joe Milton, there's no way that he can duplicate that. But I was surprised to see when I looked at the stats, he had 10 touchdowns and no picks last year.
Yeah. The way that Josh Heupel runs this offense is really interesting because obviously it's very kind to quarterbacks, and it's not simple, but it is. It's just, reading a defense and deciding what to do and just going out there and doing it almost as quickly as possible. But he does make it with the play calling and the play structures. There's a lot built into it, this keeping the ball out of danger, where almost like, you almost, obviously this is not true, but you almost feel like, well, I could go out there and maybe not throw a bunch of interceptions. Who knows? Of course, that's definitely false. I mean, look at me. But, it really is. It's just extremely quarterback friendly, bottom line being. But with that said, it still could be worse than you saw with Hendon Hooker. I mean, he was really exceptional at taking care of the ball. And then when Joe Milton got his chances, obviously until the Orange Bowl, most of his chances were really in garbage time. But when he got his chances, he took care of the football. And you love to see that. Now, Milton, obviously the thing, everybody, Bazooka Joe, Overthrow Joe, whatever his reputation has become. He has a cannon for an arm, but his touch on the football is not as good as it could be. Although, in that Orange Bowl, I think you really saw where his ability can go. Because I think over the course of his time at Tennessee, he has gotten way better at things like medium range passes. He threw some absolute dimes in that game that weren't just bombs over the top. Obviously, he excels at that, and you saw it in that game. I mean, he can literally throw just a 65-yard pass and Tennessee has some of the quickest receivers in college football, and he can get them the football that way. But also, I mean, he threw an awesome touchdown pass right over the middle, beautiful through coverage into the end zone, and in that game against Clemson, and he has the ability to do that. And so you take it all into consideration, and you think, yeah, he's probably not going to be Hendon Hooker, but if he can continue the progression that he has gotten markedly better. And anybody who's serious and has really watched his time at Tennessee, I think would agree. I don't know exactly what his ceiling is, but I think it's still really high. Is he going to have that Hooker near Heisman season? I don't know. I don't think so. But if he continues to progress, maybe. Seems at least in the realm of possibility.
So if they've got to go to the backup, do you think the true freshman is going to be the backup, or do you think that there somebody else in play that has some reps and some time on campus that might be a little bit more reliable?
Really, the only other guy that they could go to, because Taven Jackson would have been that third guy, he transferred to Indiana. The only other person is really Gaston Moore, Navy Schuler. And both of them are walk-ons. They just got another walk-on. But that's really it. That's all that's behind those top two guys. It's going to be a hard sell to get anybody in that room at this point. If they try to continue to go to the transfer portal this offseason, maybe there's a needle in a haystack out there that would be willing to come and sit on the bench. I mean, that's what you're asking of a guy if you were to come in here and transfer. Not only are you sitting on the bench, but you very may well be sitting on the bench behind a freshman even when you transfer to Tennessee. So it's just a tough situation to sell to anybody.
Yeah.
And so, no, I mean, there really isn't. It's going to be Joe or it's going to be Nico, unless they just feel really strongly about redshirting Nico or something. I don't think they're going to do that. I get the feeling that they're going to probably try to put him in a decent amount in garbage time and really get him some reps that way. Because he's a guy that I don't think you even look at as a 4-year player or anything like that. If he's as good as his recruiting advertised, he's going to go to the NFL as soon as possible because he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in America. If he lives up to the hype of everything that has happened coming in. So, Nico's the next guy up, but what I've been saying in this off season, the ideal to me, since the reports coming out have been that Joe is kind of taking him under his wing, and obviously Joe is such a veteran guy, and he's been such a great sport since he's gotten to Tennessee, being the starter, then not being the starter anymore, having a great relationship with Hendon Hooker, even though Hendon Hooker took his job. I mean, the dude has just been an absolute trooper, and I'm glad that he's finally getting his chance. I mean, the ideal thing for me is that he stays healthy through the entire season, has a really solid season, can guide Nico. You don't ever have to throw Nico in there where it's just a trial by fire. You saw when Josh Dobbs originally came in, I want to say like his first game where he played a significant number of minutes was against Alabama. You don't want that. For a freshman, something like that. Just and maybe Nico is a guy that's just, he can turn it on when the lights are on, and he's going to be a star no matter when you put him in, no matter what age he is, no matter how much experience he is. Those dudes do exist. Again, it has happened, but they are extremely rare. And so I think the ideal situation is he comes in garbage time, gets his reps that way, and then his time comes the next year. So that's the ideal situation to me. But hey, spring ball might come, fall ball might come, and Nico just looks like the dude who knows, but that does seem a little far-fetched to me at the moment.
Charlie, you talk about quick, elusive wide receivers, but two of the best in the country gone. Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt gone. Brew McCoy, wow, he finally found his spot. It took him a while to find where he should be destined in college football, but once he did, man, he could be not that he didn't have a really great season last year, 52 catches, but he could be a star this year. He's that good.
Yes.
Based on what I've seen.
Obviously, he was a bona fide 5-star going into USC. Never really got his footing there. Now is at Tennessee. Also, something happened with Texas there, too. He tried to transfer to Texas. Didn't work. Something, it was just messy. Finally, he's gotten to Tennessee. And yes, I mean, when he got his hands on the football, he was a great after contact guy. Obviously, he's huge and tough to bring down and has great hands. And I mean, he's a guy that if everything goes correctly, he will probably be a pretty decently high draft pick next year, just like Hyatt will be this season. And So that's the type of dude that you have. But I love the mix of receivers that Tennessee has too. On top of McCoy, obviously he's going to be kind of the dude. But you have Squirrel White, who is an absolute burner, and you saw that in the Orange Bowl. Caught a couple of really great passes. One giant one over the top where he just straight burned the defender he was going against, and that's the ability that he has is speed. I love that his name is Squirrel. It's almost like his name is just so fitting to who he is as a player. It's awesome. I mean, I don't think that I don't even know. I'm not sure I even know his real name, but I love. Obviously, he's gotten that name from how he plays. But anyway, but then you have the transfer, Dante Thornton, who's coming in from Oregon. And I think it's pretty fitting because I feel like Tennessee has sort of gotten this reputation now as like the Oregon of the SEC of sorts with the way that they play offense, or at least the Oregon as it was run under Chip Kelly back, in the day. And so he's another really speedy guy, really experienced guy, has put in some really nice minutes in Oregon. And so I'm excited because it's an interesting situation because Heupel plays a very tight rotation because of this offense. Obviously, the offense is built where just everybody stays on the field if it's run correctly because it's extremely fast. There's really no time for substitutions. That's kind of the whole point. You don't leave the defense any time to substitute. But in the same, you can't substitute either. So they run a really tight rotation at every position, including wide receiver. And I'm interested to see who kind of emerges there. Because, until the Orange Bowl where Jalen Hyatt was sitting out, Squirrel didn't really get his time to shine. He had a couple of opportunities, and he took them, and he seized them in garbage time in games, kind of like Joe Milton. But that is all that we had really seen of him. And it turns out that obviously that paid off, and he's looking pretty good against even great opponents. So I'm interested to see where they go because it's they kind of have a set of players. I mean, there's even a freshman coming in, Nathan Laycock, who's a really highly rated wide receiver. I want to say top 50 in America, I think, overall, not just top 50 receiver, but top 50 overall as a player. And so you have some dudes like that could be competing too. So that wide receiver room, you lose two of the best dudes in America this year, and then you're loading them up with some guys that are probably going to be more of the best guys in America in the coming years. So, I mean, it's just typical Josh Heupel offense stuff, right? That's what he's made his name on, is just having dudes, and obviously at the wide receiver position, straight line speed, but then Brew McCoy really isn't that, and he's also shined in it. So it's I think they're pretty set there, even though there were some losses.
Are we looking at Princeton Fant at tight end? What are the options there?
So it'll be I believe Jacob Warren and McAllen Castles, the transfer at tight end. Heard really good things about Castles. I think he came from UC Davis, I want to say. And is transferring in. Jacob Warren, who got a decent amount of play time, but was overshadowed by Princeton Fant in the past season because Fant, I loved seeing the evolution of Princeton Fant because in the last season, when Josh Heupel was just getting really creative, they had really settled in on offense in the middle of that season, and they were just throwing in everything in the kitchen sink down the stretch. Princeton Fant, he ran as a fullback, a running back, a tight end. He threw a touchdown pass, so maybe quarterback also. Like he was just all over the place as a player, super versatile. And so you kind of get the feeling that they'll want to do that going forward with the guys that they have. And can Castles and Jacob Warren be those dudes? I hope so, because I think when this offense is at its best, tight ends are really involved to a pretty decent extent. And so Warren hasn't done a ton in his time at Tennessee, but I think he has the potential to. And then Castles, obviously, it's a little bit of an unknown because he hasn't played really high-level football yet. But supposedly, I mean, his skill set, I saw projections of him as an NFL guy after this coming year. So I hope that all comes to fruition and it's all true, because when a tight end can get involved and you can get a guy like Princeton Fant was this last year, it just adds so many fun wrinkles and can really add depth to what Josh Heupel is doing on offense. So I think they'll be fine, although it's it's definitely a position compared to the set of wide receivers. It's definitely a position where it's sort of like, we'll see more than we're sure this is going to be a great position for this team.
Yeah, Charlie Burris here talking up the Vols. Of course, you can catch Charlie on A to Z Sports, Big Orange podcast. All right, running backs, Jabari Small and Jalen Wright, obviously, they were basically starters 1 and 1A. You put them together, and it's like a Heisman Trophy kind of season. 23 touchdowns, 1,600 yards rushing. Both of them, I lost my notes here. Both of them gone, right?
No, they're both coming back.
Both coming back.
Yep.
Okay.
And Dylan Sampson, who was a freshman that kind of emerged in the latter half of the season. And then you also have a freshman coming in, Cam Selden, he's an athlete, may play running back. They may have other things planned for him, but I know he can play running back. That was kind of in the cards in his recruitment. And that's probably the set of dudes that you had there. You had a couple of running backs transferred during the offseason, just guys that were probably not going to get playing time anyway. And so, I mean, yeah, you're stacked right up where you were before. There was kind of an offseason episode where Jalen Wright tweeted out something that kind of was like alluding to him leaving. He said it was like, it's nothing personal, it's just business. And then like 2 days later, they announced a big NIL deal for him. Like it was one of those situations. But yeah, they'll be back. Jabari Small was a little prone to injury this season. Maybe he can fight through that in the coming year. That would be good. But there, as you said, it's really a committee. And when you add them all together, it equals a really great running back room. But there's no one single guy that's just the emergent alpha dog there. And that's honestly, that's okay, because like in this offense, a lot of what it is, they definitely do. They rip open big runs. It happened against Clemson in the Orange Bowl and happened all season long otherwise. But that certainly does happen. But a lot of it is like they go over the top for a big throw, get down into the red zone, and then hand the ball off. And like there has been, at least my own observation, there's kind of been some stolen valor from the wide receivers by the running backs, because it'll be a big pass over the top, huge pass over the top. This happened a lot this season. And the pass will go to the 2-yard line, and then they just punch it in. And like a bunch of those 23 touchdowns that they had last year were that situation. I want to say it happened twice just in the Orange Bowl. And so that's totally fine, because at the end of the day, it's not like it's just some given that even if you're at the 2-yard line, you're going to get into the end zone. That's not, it's easier said than done in SEC football. And they were great at doing that. They were able to punch the ball in and be effective in that setting. And I think that was something that changed this year over the previous year, was that they were able to figure out how to line up without the tempo and without all of that stuff, just line up man to man and get 2, 3, 4 yards. They really, on 4th down, on 3rd down, when they need that short yardage, just line the dudes up and cram the ball down your throat. They found out how to do that in this past season. And in Josh Heupel's first season, they struggled with that a pretty decent amount. And I think obviously with the same room coming back, if they can work well with a rejiggered offensive line, you got, obviously, I assume we're probably going to talk about that in a minute. A little bit of a different offensive line. I think they'll still be pretty good in that position. And then hopefully just with Jalen Wright getting older, Dylan Sampson getting older, and just progressing, hopefully they just get that much better.
Yeah, so the guys up front that make it all happen, Jerome Carvin and Darnell Wright off to the NFL, correct? And Otherwise, what do we have?
So it's going to be on the left side, presumably still Gerald Mincey and JJ Crawford, who were kind of interchangeable this past season and did an admirable job. Now, you should preface it, just like everything else with Josh Heupel's offense, what they do is unique. And there isn't just a ton of the quarterback sitting back there, and you have to just block for an inordinate amount of time. That doesn't happen a ton in this offense. And so you don't just need absolute like hog mollies in the trenches. So like at that left tackle position, are either of those guys that I just mentioned probably like elite dudes that are going to have long NFL careers? Probably not, but they can definitely get the job done. They got the job done this last season, and Tennessee went 11-2, so that's staying the same. But then you have at the guard positions some combination of Javonte Spraggins, this new kid from, I think, Texas, Andre Carrick, is projected to be a guard, even though he played tackle at Texas. And then at right tackle, where you're replacing Darnell Wright. I mean, Darnell Wright's probably going to be a first-round pick. He's projected by a lot of people to get there. I mean, he was excellent. One of the best offensive linemen in the SEC this past season, and really didn't get his due for that, frankly. It was kind of under the radar. Presumably, it's going to be a transfer, John Campbell. But they do have other options. And your center is staying the same, and that's good. I think that's a really great thing. It's going to be Cooper Mays, barring any injury or anything like that. And so that's good consistency there. But otherwise, I mean, you have another transfer, Larry Johnson. I think he's more of a long-term option. He came out of JUCO, I want to say. So they're going to have to figure out the right tackle spot. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And Jerome Carvin was kind of an unsung hero too, and he's getting replaced. And like I said, it's Spraggins, Carrick. I'm not sure exactly where they'll line up left, right. But it's going to be a little bit of an overhaul there. It is what it is as far as that offensive line goes, and I'm interested to see exactly where they go. But again, does it have to be just a stone wall in front of the quarterback? Not really, with what Tennessee does, and I think they'll get it figured out in time. But yeah, you're replacing one of the best offensive linemen in the SEC, and you can't just understate that, you know?
One of the best offenses, period, in college football in 2022. No doubt about that. Any way you slice it, and it's not a run-heavy offense. It's not a pass-heavy offense. They were exceptional at both, and that's what Josh Heupel has brought to Tennessee. And we have found out that the experiment must work. Tempo does work in the SEC, and Josh Heupel's offense, everybody's running spread, everybody's doing variations of that, but he just kind of, there's certain things that I pick up in every game that gets talked about that I think, okay, he does that different and better than others. And it is working, and it's exciting. No question.
It's been fascinating to watch, frankly, because I was super skeptical when he first got to Tennessee. You know, I was like, this works at UCF. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And I mean, he 11-2. The results speak for themselves. What are you going to say? That it didn't work? No, it did work. It was the best offense in America last year. And I think the scary thing has to be for other teams looking around is like, if this guy gets defensive players, what is that going to look like? Like, obviously you have the quarterback of the future. I don't think he's at this point. You have the Biletnikoff winner from this past season. You have multiple guys going to the NFL from that wide receiver room. He's not going to have any trouble getting wide receivers. Offensive line, again, doesn't need to be a stone wall. No. So if they don't recruit at an extremely elite level there, I think they'll still be fine. And you just look at the next 3-4 years that Josh Heupel already has this team set up for. If they find the defense, that's got to be a scary thought. I mean, they beat Alabama. They beat LSU. They beat every other lower level SEC East team outside of Lord knows whatever happened against South Carolina, but still. And then they, in Josh Heupel's first year, they steamrolled South Carolina. So, he's kind of covered every base so far outside of beating Georgia. And, the defense is the next thing that has to fall in line. And can he figure that out? I don't know. But the offense, there's simply no question. He is, one of the elite minds in all of college football at this point on the offensive side of the ball. And I mean, if you're questioning that at this point, I don't know what you've been watching, but it's been wild to watch, and it's frankly just really exciting as somebody that gets to cover and cheer for the team. It's cool.
Well, Charlie, we are going to make it tougher on you next time because you're going to have to come back and review the defense.
It is a little bit of a different prospect, although I will put it this way: with the transfer portal, they have filled some needs, and so that's good. But obviously, we can get into that whenever we cover the defense.
Charlie Burris, A to Z Sports, Big Orange Podcast. Check it out. Charlie, we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Mark, and I'm happy to come back whenever you need me.